Welcome back to another episode of the Karter Cast. I'm your host, Karter Baughan. With me, as always, Ben, Dylan, Connor. We're back. Another football preview. If you didn't listen to the ACC preview, go check it out. Phenomenal episode. Great episode. Talked about the ACC. Went through almost every single team. Great stuff in there. Go listen. We have our SEC and Big 10 preview coming very soon. All of our college football stuff coming soon as well. A lot on the horizon with football coming very soon. NFL stuff coming soon. But before we get into today's episode, we are brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com. Use code KarterCast, KarterKast, just like the podcast name, for $20 off your first purchase. $50 minimum purchase required. Terms and conditions do apply. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app in the App Store today. Dylan.
Yeah, I got to say something about SeatGeek. Code KarterCast, $20 off. I went to Lollapalooza on Sunday. The Pop Punk Day, Chappell Roan, whoever she is, Blink 182, Post Sex Nachos. Great time. Shout out to SeatGeek. Code KarterCast, $20 off.
I love it.
Lots of drugs. I didn't do them.
Dylan is a drug guy. Let it be known. Put it on the quote card. Put it on the quote card. Graphic. Get the graphic ready. Anyhow, before we get into today's show, or I guess we're getting into it now, Big 12 preview. Big 12 football preview. This is the one, I'll be honest, I'm the least excited about. One, there's the least amount of storylines. Maybe not least excited about, because I think the Big 12, when you think about the conference as a whole, with all this realignment going on, it's the only conference I feel like maybe kind of outside of the SEC where it has that resemblance of an actual real conference, where there's still big rivalries, in-state rivalries like BYU, Utah, Kansas State, and others. And I think it's just a brand of super fun football, and that hasn't left even with all these teams leaving and coming and going. So I think it's fun to watch. It's the hardest conference to preview, though. It's impossible. You look through all these teams, like, you think the ACC's kind of got that middle bunch, or a lot of teams can win it. You look at the Big 12. How many teams in the Big 12 do you think realistically have a shot at winning the Big 12 title? I'll start with you, Connor.
How many teams do I think have a shot at winning it?
Yeah, a realistic shot.
I'm going to go, looking at the list here, I'm going to go 6, possibly 7, but probably 6 is the right number. I think 6 is the right number.
Dylan.
I really only have like 3.
3?
A lot of these teams did not impress me as I was looking. And I'll be the first to say it. Not a big Big 12 guy. So,
yeah, it's the antithesis of what everything you believe in football.
No defense. That's absolutely everything that I go against. But yeah, like, there were 3 teams that really stood out to me, and the rest were kind of just a jumbled mess. And then there were a couple that sorted their way at the bottom. So,
Ben,
yeah.
How many teams can win it?
6.
I agree. I think it's 6 or 7. You look through it and you're like, if these teams get hot, their defense puts it together slightly. You look at Oklahoma State last year. Oklahoma State loses to South Alabama at the beginning of the season. They turn it around. All of a sudden, they find themselves waddling into the Big 12 title game. Like, how did that happen?
Well, the thing is with this conference is there's so many, I would say, above average quarterbacks that if everything falls in place around them, if all the other pieces magically line up, there's enough quarterbacks where there are 6 or 7 teams that could make a run at the title game. And I will say also about the Big 12, it's the hardest conference to form strong opinions on. Because realistically, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, oh, I like this team. Like, over 7.5 wins, they're going to get 8-4 for sure. And then you look at the schedule and I'm like, wait, that team's pretty good. Oh, that team's not an easy out. Oh, they're playing on the road in Kansas State. Like, oh, no, that's not going to be a good game. The hardest conference for me to form opinions about by far.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of these teams, when we get into the season, you'll see these random teams, like, for example, let's say TCU wins a few games early on in the season, and they're ranked 24 in the country, but then they're going to find themselves as like a 4-point underdog on the road against an unranked Big 12 team like Cincinnati. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm taking Cincinnati then, since they're the unranked favorite. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to this conference. I'm excited to watch it. It's going to be very hard to preview, but let's kind of get into it. Let's start at the top of the conference. Oh, go ahead, Connor.
Well, I just had a quick question for you guys. This is on the spot. Big 12, will they have the most teams that are ranked at some point this season? I think maybe that's a yes. Ooh. I think there's a lot of those mid-tier teams that could find themselves like 24th, 25th at some point this year. Maybe only for a week until they lose that first conference game, but at some point.
I see this conference playing out very similarly to how the Pac-12 did last year. where there's a lot of these, like, a lot of teams that seem to be in the same kind of level, and they kind of beat up on each other. That's kind of been a trend in the Pac-12 the last few years. Rest in peace, Pac-12. I feel like we're kind of going to follow a similar model this year, especially, we talked about, like, we've ranged from 3 to 6 to 7 teams that can win it. I think there's like 6 or 7 teams that could beat up on each other.
Yeah. Well, even like I feel like the bottom feeders. Let's say you're playing in Provo on a cold Friday night. Who's to say BYU can't just win that game? That's a tough game to win on the road, and all of a sudden you're like, how did we lose to a 3-7 BYU team right now? This is crazy.
Rabid fan base, very
rabid fan base, very sober. But anyhow, let's get into the top dogs of the conference. Let's start off with the favorite of the conference, Utah. Everybody is just chalking them in. Put them in Sharpie that Utah's going to win this conference. Cam Rising back for, I believe, his 7th year, 6th, 7th year. Who knows at this point? Coming off a torn ACL. And Dorian Singer coming in from USC, return a lot of production. Kyle Whittingham might be his last year as the head coach of Utah. Sneaky storyline going into this season as well. I'll let Dylan start. Dylan, what are your thoughts on Utah going into this season?
Well, as you know, number one Utah fan in the Midwest, as you can see here, big red zone guy. Shout out to Karter for the cup last Christmas. I am going to be high on Utah. I was a big Cam Rising guy. Let's not forget that he pretty much stole the Pac-12 championship from the Golden Boy Caleb Williams 2 years ago. Granted,
got hurt.
Well, we can sit here, tomato. We sit here and pick whatever narrative we want. But at the end of the day, Utah outplayed USC. And I do think that, Cam Rising that year obviously didn't play last year. 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, about 8 yards per attempt. He's getting, like you said, Dorian Singer from USC, UCLA tight end Carson Ryan, only had 13 receptions, but 3 touchdowns, about 16 yards per reception. I expect the offense to be there, and I expect the defense to be right just because that's Whittingham's MO. My only concern is a lot of O-line transfers out. I'm not sure, if whoever's coming in is going to be good. That's my main worry, is that Cam Rising will not be able to get the protection he needs to get the ball out. And obviously he's going to be less likely to be mobile because of his previous injuries, I would assume. So I like Utah. I'm high on them. I'm high on Cam Rising. It's just the offensive line that is kind of the worry for me.
Ben, thoughts on Utah?
My thoughts on Utah are you can chalk up 9 wins no matter what. Just because that defense is going to be there. No one wants to play in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Just the physical brand of football they play, the mentality they have, they're nasty. Like, they're just a team you do not want to play. My concern is not the defense, not the run game. Those things are going to be there, and that's going to win them a lot of games. My concern, though, is the health of Cam Rising. Like, very much a concern. Along with Brant Keithy. Both of those guys, Keithy was out almost 2 years. And Rising, too, like 1.5 years. So these are 2 guys that, if they're right, like, yes, it's an 11-win team. But if they're not, and they don't have that dynamic pass game, they're like a 9-win team. So I think the variance is whether, with Utah, like I said, that they're always going to have that ground and pound, like, elite defense. It's just, do they have what it takes through the air? And I think that's a question just due to their top pass catcher and their quarterback having very, very severe injuries they're coming off of.
Yeah. Connor, any thoughts on Utah?
Yeah, I'm high on Utah this year. You guys mentioned everything you mentioned so far. Cam Rising, Brent Keithy back again. They're both 7th-year guys, I'm pretty sure. I know Keithy missed the whole year last year, but they're both 7th-year guys. Also, running back Micah Bernard only played 2 games last year. He's also back. So they're getting a lot of returning production on that offense that they didn't have last year. My one concern, obviously Cam Rising health, their offensive line. Only 2 starters are back from that O-line, but much like we touched on NC State's defense in the ACC, I trust Utah to plug and play those offensive linemen. They'll figure it out. They'll still dominate the trenches. And that's the key for this team. They need to dominate the ground game, time of possession. this Utah team, that's what they're known for. That'll open up the rest of the field for Cam Rising. I think if they establish that run game early on, they're going to be set. And if Cam Rising can stay healthy, if Keithy can stay healthy, and if that defense that was second in the Pac-12 and 13th nationally last year, only giving up 300 yards a game, if they're what they were last year, this team's winning 10, 11 games. I really do feel that way. And in a loaded Big 12 conference in the middle of them, I think Utah has separated themselves at the top as one of the top 2 or 3 teams without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's the difference when you talk about Utah right now. When you look at Utah and maybe a couple other teams in this conference is, okay, so when you go through your notes through these teams, you're like, I love their quarterback, I love their running back, I love their offense. This is phenomenal. Oh, their defense gives up 37 points a game. Oh, their defense gives up 300 rushing yards a game. Utah is the one that stops the run, plays a little more, as Dylan likes to say, Big Ten football. They play that sort of brand of football, and that's probably going to win out because they're playing disciplined football when everyone's not. And obviously they're talented. And obviously the big question is, can Cam Rising get back to his former self, which was a couple years ago? You know, a full year off of football is brutal. And especially when you're coming off an injury like that. And from what I've been told, he's not 100%, and he's just got to go because this is it. This is his last chance to play and maybe have a shot at the NFL. And the offensive line scares me because one bad hit to Cam Rising, this season's derailed completely. And even then, if Cam Rising goes down, 8 wins. 8 wins.
I wouldn't be shocked if Cam Rising doesn't throw a lot early in the year. I think also would be the thing.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have mobile Cam Rising though. I think that is gone, and which is I don't think kills Utah, especially in a somewhat weaker Big 12. But I think Utah's gonna be fine. But I don't think they're contending for a national title in any means. I don't think anybody in this conference is even close to contending for a national title, to be honest. But I don't know. I don't know. Any other thoughts on Utah?
Scheduling note for Utah. They get to play Arizona at home. They avoid Kansas State. Those 2 things are huge. They do have to play in Oklahoma State, so that's going to be a tough out. But I still think if Rising stays healthy, and even if he's not fully 100% what he was, that's 10 wins. I still think
they got to play. They got to play BYU.
Yeah, that's true.
Rivalry game.
Question for those that are geographically out there: Utah State rivalry game, or does that not matter? Not much. No. Well, I was just wondering, you talked about Oklahoma State and they have to they're away. Granted, it's only at Utah State, but back-to-back away is never fun for anybody, no matter who you're playing. So that might cause some trouble. But I'm with you guys. I think even if Rising gets hurt, we saw them with Barnes win 8 games last year. I think it's if Cam Rising is there, they're a very good team. If he doesn't play all the year, I think they're a good team.
And sneaky, like, if this is Kyle Woodingham's last season, sneaky farewell tour, sneaky, like, hey, last dance with the fellas, let's go out and let's make the college football playoff. First year in the Big 12, make some noise. And probably the only team with an above-average defense in this conference, for being
because
honest.
They're not from this conference. It's because they're not from this conference.
Well, they came from a conference with even worse defense, which is funny enough.
True.
All right, let's do a little bit on K-State. They're favorites in this conference as well. Avery Johnson taking over for Will Howard now. They bring back DJ Giddens. That rushing game's going to be phenomenal. Chris Kleiman, unbelievable head coach. He just seems he's in that Dave Doran, these guys in college football where they're just like 8 wins. I feel like you can pencil them in for 8 wins. Can they get to that next level? I don't know. Ben, do you have any thoughts on Kansas State?
Yeah, no, I really love Avery Johnson. Like, I think they're going to kind of go where he goes. I think he was really good to end the year last year, and I think you're really gambling on him, like, being the guy. And they've got a lot of strengths on the defensive line and the secondary as well. So I feel like Kansas State is a team that, although I'm not going to go out and say that they're going to have some good defense, I think it's going to be a good defense from a Big 12 perspective. And so if there are some hiccups with Avery Johnson, who is still very young, I think they can pick up the slack a little bit. But yeah, I very much expect and believe Kansas State will factor in at the top of this conference.
Yeah, Dylan.
this Avery Johnson thing, I hear what you're saying. I guess that for me personally, I just haven't seen enough, and that's not, nothing we can do about that. 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, 7.5 yards per attempt in 8 games. Will Howard, I was not completely sold on last year, and even going to Ohio State, I told Ohio State fans, you don't want this guy. But we talked about the defense of Utah, and I think Kansas State is another situation that's similar to where it might just come down to the fact that this is one of the few teams that can actually play defense in this conference, and it might be the game changer. Now, 9.5 wins, I'm not completely sold on. I think they're going to find themselves at the top 3 or 4 of this conference. But Avery Johnson, just kind of a question mark for me because I haven't seen enough. And like I said, can't do anything about that. He just hasn't played.
I kind of love that, though, with Avery Johnson because he plays the bowl game against NC State. Like, the bowl game has just become the spring game, essentially, where it's like, you see the backup play that's going to be there probably next year, and you're like, this guy's awesome. Or like in Ohio State's case, they saw a couple of their quarterbacks. They're like, yikes, get these dudes to UL Monroe. Get these guys to Syracuse. Yeah, get them out of here. We're getting someone new in for this bowl. Or for this next
Miller
season.
Moss for Heisman.
Yeah, Miller Moss for Heisman.
Miller Moss, he's a legend because of how he did in the bowl game.
Exactly. So it's the new spring game. I feel like teams cancel their spring games all the time now, which I don't like. But anyhow, Connor, anything on Kansas State?
Yeah, K-State. So, first of all, you can chalk one loss off their schedule. Texas is now out of the Big 12. That was an automatic loss every year for Kansas State. They have lost their last 7 in a row to Texas, so they're gone now. As far as the offense goes, I hear everything you guys are saying about Avery Johnson. I think the ceiling is high. He was electric last year. He had 3 games of over 70 rush yards and only started 5. Beat State in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Had a good performance. It's a bowl game. Whatever.
Rest in peace.
Defense, I think the secondary is pretty good. Jacob Parrish, a cornerback, led the team 4 picks last year, 10 pass breakups. They have a good secondary. The thing with Kansas State is I think Avery Johnson's due for the growing pain losses. I think there's going to be a couple where he's a little sporadic, maybe a couple fumbles, a couple bad turnovers, something like that. I don't know if I'm completely sold on Kansas State. Road schedule is pretty manageable at BYU, Tulane, Colorado, West Virginia, Houston, Iowa State. Those aren't terrible road games. I don't know. I feel like 9-3 feels right for this team. I'm not saying they're going to win the conference, but they'll have some growing pains, but they'll be overall pretty successful. Not going to put them above Utah though. Not going to put them above Utah.
Okay. All right.
Back-to-back at Boulder, at West Virginia, 2 weeks in a row, right in the middle of the season.
Yeah, I'm not completely sold on them, especially for a first-year starter like Avery Johnson. It's his first full season as a starting quarterback.
But
also,
go ahead.
I was going to say he is also losing a lot of starters on the offensive line. I don't have the number in front of me, but there's not a lot of experience there. So an inexperienced offensive line and an inexperienced quarterback, even though I like the quarterback, isn't the best combo. I do still think that Kansas State's I just think they're a really solid program that I trust, that I think things click at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them drop 1 or 2.
The O-line point's a good point, Ben. They were 12th nationally in rushing offense last year, and they only let up 17 total sacks. I think they lost 2 or 3 starters from that O-line, if I'm not mistaken. So you're right. How quickly do they mesh?
It's 4.
4 starters gone from the O-line.
4
so that's a lot of turnover.
Multi-year starters. Yeah, multi-year starters too. So
yeah,
there'll be a couple weird ones.
Yeah, they're going to be fun to watch. A lot of these teams in this conference, because they have high-flying offenses and insane rushing games, they're going to be super fun to watch. I'm very curious to see how Avery Johnson performs now that he has the starting job. Instead of going to the next biggest team, let's talk about the most notable team in this conference. Let's stop wasting our time. We should have almost started with this team. This should have been the A block. Colorado.
Exactly what
yeah. No.
I thought it was Oklahoma State.
No. We need to talk about Colorado now. I need to hear Dylan Wilkerson's thoughts on Coach Prime, Shadur Sanders, and the Colorado Buffaloes. Give them to me, Dylan.
What I'm going to say, a lot of people credited the issues to Colorado to the offensive line. Even Travis Hunter and Shadur, I think, both made a comment when they were playing the NCAA game about how the offensive line is realistic because they're bad. Really, at least if you put any weight to what PFF says, that they were about middle of the pack in terms of pass blocking and run blocking. The rush attack was pretty pitiful. They go out and they get linemen from Michigan State, Texas, Clemson. I think we're going to see an improvement there. I think in years past, the offensive line was a scapegoat. I don't know what it was a scapegoat for. They led the conference in offensive penalty yards, defensive penalty yards. It was a poorly disciplined team just around the whole team. But I think that Deion gets it right the second year. And obviously, in terms of a betting perspective, you can't bet on any overs for Colorado because everybody does it. There's just no value there. But I do think that Colorado will look better this year than last. I think Deion will get the boys right. They've made improvements in the transfer portal. Everybody wants to go play at Colorado, and for a good reason. You get to play for Deion. Lil Wayne's coming to Fox Big Kickoff in Boulder. Like, people want to go play for that, I think, for the most part. It is a little crass over there. You know, Deion will tell you I'm bringing my Louis. But Dallin Hayden, halfback from OSU. I hate Ohio State. He really wasn't that bad when we saw him last year for Ohio State. I'm high on Colorado, not win the conference high, but I do think that they're going to take a step up from last year.
Not what I expect you to say in the slightest.
I'm all about honesty here. I'm all about, people take their time to listen to us. I'm only going to give them the truth. No bits.
No, Dylan, no bits.
No bits.
No bits.
I'm going to bounce off that, Dylan. I think Colorado will be a little better this year, but I think their biggest issue that will continue to strike them year after year that Deion is there is they don't have a foundation. Their biggest issue is a lack of foundation. They're not getting guys in as freshmen, developing them. And it's only been 1 year, but he clearly does not want to do that, doesn't have the patience to do that maybe. The transfer portal should be about adding guys that make your team a little bit better on the fringes. Like, man, this one position we're lacking in, here's the guy coming in from a Power 5 school that can help us. Or here's 4 or 5 guys that will start for us right away. Not an entire roster of portal guys. And to use an analogy I came up with like 30 minutes ago, the portal should be the frosting on the cake, guys. Should not be the batter of the cake. There's a good analogy for you. And Deion right now is baking with strictly transfer guys. I will give credit to Shedeur Sanders. We can go into him later, but for all the hate he got, he had a pretty damn good year last year. That offensive line was brutal. I know you mentioned the PFF stuff, Dylan. They were second worst nationally in sacks allowed. Run game had 100 yards 2 games out of the whole season. He was basically running for his life last year. Still had like a 27-3 touchdown interception ratio. So I think he'll, be better this year with a hopefully improved offensive line. Defense, I don't feel so confident about, but probably better than 4-8. I would say they'll probably win 5 games.
5? I think they make a bowl. I think they make a bowl.
I think they could.
Yeah, I
could see 6-6.
I think they make a bowl game. Whoever made their schedule, though, let me go through it real quick. Who is scheduling North Dakota State? Why? What advantage is there to scheduling North Dakota State? Let's see here.
That is a scary game. That's a scary game.
You got North Dakota State to start the season on a Thursday night. Why? What is the advantage there? Then you got to go to Lincoln, Nebraska. Then you have a rivalry game at Colorado State. That is a terrible non-conference. That is not what you want to. That's a disaster non-conference. I actually
Have you seen their conference schedule? They play 7 of the top 8 teams in the conference projected.
Yes.
7 of the top 8.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
No.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say they could go 1-2 in those first 3 weeks. Like, they could.
Yeah,
that's like very possible.
Yeah, it just depends.
I'm not saying likely, but it's very possible.
Yeah, they closed the season with Utah at Kansas and Oklahoma State. That's awful.
Even this stretch I'm looking at UCF Baylor at UCF by Kansas State. Like, that's a brutal stretch of 3 games too. Granted, you have the bye in there, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm retracting my bowl statement. I don't know if they get 6 wins. That schedule is one of the hardest in the conference that I've seen.
Yeah, and it's just so hard to predict because Shedeur Sanders, you look at mock drafts right now, you see him in the late 20s. You can clip this, whatever you want to do right now. I can guarantee, 1,000% guarantee he's a top 5 pick. Guaranteed he's a top 5 pick.
Yes.
Come January, when he's working out in shorts in Boulder at pro days and he's saying, I'm the best quarterback in this draft, and Coach Prime's like, y'all better draft my son. And they do that whole charade, and everyone's like, he looks amazing when he works out in shorts. I love this. It's a guarantee he's going to go top 5. I would not be surprised if Shedeur Sanders ends up going 1. He's a phenomenal quarterback. Travis Hunter's great. They got a bunch of great weapons. But there's just so much boomer bust potential. And when you look at Colorado online, there's this weird thing where it's almost like in politics where everyone feels like they have to take certain sides on things with Colorado. You either have to hate Deion in Colorado or you have to love him. No, and the media members do this too. I feel like I'm seeing so many articles being like, either Colorado is going to be great, they're awesome, and then the next one I read is there is a culture problem at Colorado. Coach Prime said, if you don't come to my son's rap concert, you're off the team and you're losing NIL money and stuff. Like, I don't even know what's true at this point. It's just these crazy reports coming out, and which leads me to believe that with this boomer bust, I could see them either hitting this crazy media high and they just are rolling. They are rolling. They are the talk of the town. They are the talk of college football. They were the talk of college football when they were bad last year. Let's say they just get on a nice run. They get out of those first 4 weeks alive, and they're 4-0 going into that UCF game, or even 5-0 playing Kansas State. The world's going to be crazy. There's that huge boom potential, but I also think that bust potential's there where it's, let's say they lose. They're probably going to beat North Dakota State. Let's say they get humiliated against Nebraska on national TV. I could see dudes just quitting on the spot. That's how weird the program and the culture is at Colorado. You could just be like Travis Hunter's like, yeah, I'm not playing anymore because this is stupid. I'm saving myself for the draft. Like, I could see these dudes quitting week 4 out of nowhere, and we're looking at a 2-10, 3-9 disaster season. But if you told me that Colorado gets super hot and they're locked in and these transfers come in and made huge improvements on the offensive line and defensive side of the ball, and you told me, yeah, they went 9-3, 10-2, and they're competing for the Big 12 title game, I wouldn't say you're insane. I wouldn't say you're insane.
I would say you're insane. I think that's way too far. There's no way this team gets more than 7 wins.
But when you potentially have the best quarterback in the nation, one of the best wide receivers, and they have legit individual dudes, I think as a unit they struggle. But like guys like BJ Green on the defensive side of the ball, like they've got guys, but maybe as the unit as a whole, they struggle. Like, I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if you told me anything that happened, unless they went undefeated, of course. But if they're in that Big 12 title game mix come week 8-9, I would not be shocked. And if you told me, yeah, half the team quit mid-season and they're 1-8, I also wouldn't be shocked.
I just look at Colorado, Karter, from I think of it from like a college. I'm going to use almost like college basketball terminology, but like Connor said foundation. And like, I think that's a good word. I thought like continuity too. Like there's just no like, okay, well, we were this last year. Let's like take that, add something to it, and then get better. They're like, no, let's just blow that up and just start over a second time.
But I also think that's
kind of what it's.
And I agree to your point. I think that's fair. And you got to, especially on the offensive line, you got to have that continuity. And that was their biggest hole last year. And so, but at the same time, they had to blow it up because we would have been saying what we said on the ACC podcast where, oh, that's cool. They returned everyone. Everyone sucked on that team last year. Like, I would rather take that chance with all these portal guys when I saw those guys had no hope as being a barely, at best, they make a bowl game last year. Even then, it felt lucky they won, was it 5 games?
4.
4, yeah. They went 4-8.
4-8.
Yeah. But
yeah.
No, but Karter, this kind of feels like I think you kind of have to start trying to like build something. Like trying to like, okay, let's get the right guys and then try to get some continuity here. Because otherwise, then you're kind of like the college football version of like Eric Musselman at Arkansas.
But I think they have
like,
I think
here are a group of guys who are good at football, and let's just pray it works.
I think that foundation is Shadur and Travis Hunter. Like I think they have those elite guys. I think
gone this year.
But when you think of foundation in football, you think about what the Niners and the Lions have built. You're like, oh, you're going to have an awesome offensive line and an awesome defensive line, and then you build out from there. But like, they're kind of doing it the opposite way in Colorado in college football. It's just kind of interesting. But Connor, you had something to say?
Yeah, the whole foundation thing. You know what else you think of? You think of coaches that have built great programs. Deion Sanders' goal is not to be the head coach of Colorado for 30 years. He is not looking to stay in Boulder for the next 25, 30 years and build some crazy program and foundation. I'm going to be honest, spoiler, I don't think he really cares that much about Colorado. He wants Travis Hunter and Shadur and like all these people. Yes, he wants success for the kids. He's a great role model. I think he's a pretty good coach as far as like motivator, recruiting, all that stuff. His end goal personally, selfishly for himself, he wants to coach in a better Power 5, Power 4 now position, eventually make it to the NFL, maybe be a professional coach somehow. His end goal is not Colorado. He's not that worried about being a 25-year foundation kind of guy and getting some of these recruits.
Great
Like
point.
there's no way in hell that that's his end goal. So it might be a selfish take, a selfish perspective, but I don't think he cares that much about building a 25-year foundation. Not at Colorado. That's not the end goal.
Question: is he there next year?
That's a great question.
If he gets a better
I was
job
gonna
offer,
ask
no.
that.
If he gets a better job offer, no.
He could not be. Like this feels like a perfect opening for him to move if he wanted to move. Okay, my son and then my other son are now gone. Like because he claims Travis Hunter's like another son of his. So like they move on. Like does he look like, okay, my job was to get them to the NFL. Now I'm doing what's best for me.
Oh, I don't hate that at all. I mean, I wonder what the odds would be in Vegas. I bet it's close to even money that he's the head coach of Colorado next year. I think the perfect way to describe this is I think he's just going to end up like how we all play college football 25 dynasty. We're like, I'm sick of this school. I'm taking the next job. Ooh, offensive coordinator at Auburn. Yeah, I'm out of here. Like, I'm not doing this again.
He's like Doug's.
Yeah.
He becomes Coach Doug's.
Yeah, Coach Prime just becomes Coach Doug's of college football in real life.
I don't want this question that I'm about to ask to be taken the wrong way, but do we think he like wants to coach? Like once his son is gone, do you think that's his career choices to coach?
Yeah.
Why? What makes like I think he could really mail it in, do some media appearances, and make all the money. I mean, he's got to have plenty of money, make all the money he needs, and he can just do whatever he wants.
Because if he
Like,
didn't,
He has to think of a chip on his shoulder. I think.
yeah, because with the
Like,
whole,
I think he's got to like he wants a big like FU moment
especially to Florida
at
State.
some point. Yeah.
Okay,
Like if he,
that's
he
fair.
makes the college football playoff at a power program, beats Florida State, like he's saying sayonara, I'm out. Like I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
one big nice run. I could see that. But I do think he is someone that like I think he isn't a long-term head coach, but I think he is a head coach until he gets the ammo that he can use to tell everyone they were wrong.
So
That's
SEC
fair.
football, Texas
Yeah.
A&M.
Watch out, DeBoer.
No, they got
Well,
money.
there's nothing holding. There's nothing
No,
holding
but
him in
Elko-
Colorado if they go 3-9. He will leave. Like if it blows up and they have a horrible season, there's no ties to him in Boulder.
Even if
Son's
they
gone.
have a good season, let's say they finish 8-4. Once Shadur's gone, like, do you think he's like, you know what? Like, let's do this thing in Boulder again? I don't know.
I don't.
don't know.
I wouldn't think so. I think once Shador's gone, I don't know. And maybe I'm selling the guy short. I don't know, but it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that.
All right. Let's move on. Do we want to talk Oklahoma State or get into underrated, overrated?
Let's
I
do
think we talk
underrated,
Oklahoma State.
overrated.
Oh,
Oh, we can. No, let's do it.
Let's do Oklahoma State.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
look,
I think they're worth it.
Yeah, I think they are too because they're a very good football team. I'll just put it there. I love Oklahoma State. Just give me all the Oklahoma State stock you can buy. I haven't placed a lot of college football futures this year, but I've placed on NC State and Oklahoma State. Those are the two I've placed. Spoiler alert: they're my favorite bet to go over wins. I love Oklahoma State. Everything about them. Connor, what do you have to say about them?
Wait a second. Not my show. But Carter, I want to hear from you first because you sound pretty high on this, and I have not seen anything that would make me as confident as you are about how good this Oklahoma State team is going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, so if you watch the beginning of last season, they were awful. I won money on South Alabama. What do you think the spread was in that South Alabama game, Dylan? It was in Stillwater.
28.5.
We're talking 3 touchdowns?
No, it was only a 6.5 point spread.
Wow.
That's how bad this
That was
team
way
was.
off.
They were terrible to start the season because they didn't figure out the quarterback situation, and they finally hit their stride later on in the year, and they finally decided, oh, we need to give the best running back in football, Ollie Gordon, the ball. The offensive line found their groove. They all return, and on the defensive side, almost everybody returns with a few added transfer guys and guys coming off injuries. Plus, when they had Bowman and Gordon running the show, that's when they hit their stride. That's when they finally they got lucky making the Big 12 title game, I think for sure. Like, they should have lost to BYU at the end of the season. Like, they really didn't have much business being in the Big 12 title game. But the fact that they hit their stride and did that, and now they're bringing everyone back and more experience, they figured out who they are. They figured out their identity. There's no identity crisis at the beginning of the season like a lot of these teams have, especially with a bunch of transfers coming in. I know who they are, and especially that offensive line. I wouldn't be surprised if 4 out of 5 of those dudes got drafted in the NFL after this season. A great unit, and they have the best running back in football by far in Ollie Gordon. Now, the DUI, different story, Dylan. I know how you don't like that, but that's the reason I'm in on Oklahoma State. I love them over 8.5 wins, and I also sprinkled them to win the title as well in the Big 12.
Wow.
Is that what you wanted? Is that
I mean, that's what I asked for. I just don't. When I was doing my research here, Michigan goat Alan Bowman. You know, he's been in college football for about 10 years.
Before
now.
you go on, I want to make this clear. Like, I don't think Alan Bowman's is like phenomenal quarterback. I think he's a pretty slightly above average Big 12 quarterback. I think that's the best way to put it. Like, I don't think he's
30 years old now.
Yeah, so, exactly. They have Brandon Whedon essentially. They brought back Brandon Whedon. Yeah. I don't think he's his great quarterback, but like I don't think he sniffs the top 5-6 quarterbacks in the Big 12. But I think he's like 8 or 9.
I think he's probably Ben's number 1. He's Ben's number 1 quarterback. He's returned 6 times now. Has to be.
No, it's like he's one of those guys where like I just think all you need from him is you need for him to just like
hand the ball,
not screw up, and just go ahead.
Yeah, and I think in a conference of great defenses, like of bad defenses, like let's say we put Oklahoma State in the SEC or Big 10 where they have much better defenses, I would worry about them. But in this conference, I think they're honestly a top 5-6 defense this year. And you go along with the best running back in football and you return all these guys. And Mike Gundy, who's been there forever and has won the thing multiple times, I'm in on Oklahoma State.
All right, I want to go on my spiel about Oklahoma State here. Alec, like you guys said, Alan Bowman, 7th-year guy. Get a job. Let's go. Come on. It's time.
LinkedIn, baby.
They have another 7th-year linebacker on the other side of the ball. So they're just bringing in like the whole, 20th century guys. Anyways, scored 29 or more points in 7 of the last 10 last year. They really hit a stride, like Karter said, with Ollie Gordon, finally, having that breakout year. I will say my one concern with Ollie Gordon is he was relatively coming into the year, nobody knew he would be that good. Now, coming into this year, he's one of the best running backs in football. He'll be the center of every scouting report. So I do trust the O-line. 4 out of 5 starters are back. They were great in 2023. 8th nationally in sacks allowed. 4 of them are back. Defense, pretty good. They were top 20 in turnovers. Entire starting secondary's back. Linebackers are probably the calling card of this team.
Yep.
Overall, if they are able to find success through the air, at least a little bit better than last year. Bowman had 14 picks compared to 15 touchdowns last year. If he's able to rectify that just a little bit, enough to keep teams from putting 8-9 guys in the box against Ollie Gordon, I think they find a lot of success in this conference, and I do like them to go over 8.5 wins. And Karter, on your advice, I also bet them plus 800 to win the Big 12.
Love them.
One of my favorite futures.
Also, if let's say I had a job at working in marketing at LinkedIn, the number one thing is I would be doing NIL deals left and right with the Armando Baycott's, Cam Risings, and Alan Bowman's of the world. That would be the easiest, no-brainer sponsorship right there. Partner with LinkedIn. Duh. It'd be hilarious.
They got the LinkedIn Big 12 conference.
Yeah. Also
Cormac Ryan.
Cormac Ryan.
Too.
Great point.
Yeah.
Every Carolina basketball player. I don't know,
Yeah. Go ahead. Keep you
Dylan,
on.
it sounds like you're not high on Oklahoma State.
No. First off, the last year they had a conference Big 12 worst in pass yards allowed, 275. Teams were just able to go over top of this defense, and I know I joke Michigan go Alan Bowman. The style of football that Oklahoma State is going to play reminds me of Michigan. Running back centric. You have a game manager at quarterback. That's essentially what Alan Bowman is. 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I don't see the hype. The pass blocking is going to be improved, but what it comes down to at the end of the day is Alan Bowman's been in college football for 7 years or 6 years. This is 7th. And we haven't seen anything. And it's just tough to get me on board to say this is going to be what is going to be it's kind of similar to how we talked about Cade Klubnik with Clemson and the ACC. I'm not buying into it. I'm not like dead set on it and want to come up against you guys. I would love for a Michigan man to see success, just another ring on the finger, but I'm not buying it.
But with that being said, like for how average he was, even if he improves a little bit, they still won 10 games last season. And that, like that's where that floor is there for them. Like I really don't see a world where they win less than 8 games, to be honest, this season. Now, who is doing the non-conference scheduling in the Big 12? Because these teams have the dumbest non-conference schedules. All these teams are playing like random road games, like Oklahoma State. Why are you traveling to Tulsa to play them? Like, I love that you do that. I love in-state games. I think Appalachian State should have to play everybody in North Carolina, and they should have to travel to Boone as well. But if you're the athletic director, why are you doing that? Schedule the dumbest teams. Get the Citadel in there. Get Campbell. What are you doing? Like, why?
I'm with you.
This isn't the mamby-pamby SEC where Alabama's scheduling,
New Mexico
like you
State
said, the
in week
Citadel
11.
week 10. Yeah. 'Cause it means a little bit more up here in the Big 12.
You know how frustrating that is, like when we do our previews and stuff, and then you see like, oh, by the way, number 3 Alabama, they're favored by 48.5 against New Mexico State, and we're in November. Like,
yeah,
why are we doing this? But Connor, go ahead.
Ben, do you expect anything less from a Duke basketball guy like Karter who schedules Fairfax?
Oh my
God!
You're talking about.
I would expect
Of course, he
You're
is saying
talking-
this.
you're talking
He
about-
loves the cupcakes.
Okay, time out. Dude, we can get into this. I mean, Coach K, that was Coach K's
Marist.
philosophy. Duke has a harder schedule than Carolina in the non-conference this year, so I don't want to hear it. You have. I don't think you don't
You
even
count
know.
the Maui Invitational? You count the Maui Invitational? They could play like 3 top 10 teams in that.
But we're actually playing true road games. So we got to go at Arizona. We got to play Kansas. We got to play
I'm not sold.
Kentucky.
Hunter Dickinson, go.
There we go. There you go, Dylan. Yeah, Hunter Dickinson. Anyhow,
Go.
all right. Anything else on Oklahoma State, Ben? Do you have anything?
No, the only thing I was going to say was Connor was saying, yeah, like a guy like Ollie Gordon's going to be the focus of the scouting report. I think my question to rebuttal that is, will it even matter with some
Probably
of these
not.
Big 12 defenses? It's like, okay, we need to stop Ollie Gordon. Just key in on Ollie Gordon. Who can maybe Utah can probably disrupt that, and maybe Kansas State. That's about it though. Otherwise, like I think even if they're like, okay, we're just gonna, just pack the box and we're just not gonna let him run, like it won't matter.
Wait, you're saying
outside of 1.5 teams.
You're saying Colorado isn't going to stop Ollie Gordon? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying.
He might
with
run.
Lil Wayne on the sidelines, he might be distracted.
We might be seeing a Bo Jackson type performance in the last week of the season by Oklahoma State.
Five of the last 6 games for Oklahoma State are against teams that were below 500. So they get Utah in Stillwater. Like there are certain things on this schedule that line up nicely for them. I
don't like how they have to play Utah and Kansas State back to back. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
That is tough.
But,
that is tough.
Like you look at the end of the schedule, like I don't like reading schedules, but let's do it really quick. At BYU, win. At Baylor, win. Arizona State, win. At TCU, things get weird. Texas Tech at home, probably a win, senior night. And then at Colorado, win. Like, I don't think that's
easily 5 of 6.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, let's do overrated team in the Big 12. This is the hardest one by far. I feel like all of ours are going to be kind of a reach a little bit, and it's going to look really dumb on the graphic, but it'll be fine because, who cares? Yeah. So who wants to start?
I'll start. I'll start with this one. Again, we talked about this team. I think their defense is good. The big question mark I have is just at quarterback, and that's Kansas State. Again, I don't want it to be like, oh, Dylan hates Kansas State, they're going to be awful. But this was a pretty tough exercise for this conference because the teams at the top, I think Utah is going to be good. Kansas State was really the one that popped out to me as maybe a little overrated.
All right. Yeah. I don't disagree with your reasoning, but it's so hard to find a team that you find overrated in this conference when they're fairly properly rated. Connor, go ahead.
I can't believe, me and Dylan are just in sync. Kansas State's my overrated team as well. I think it's more so the fact that I do like Utah and I'm high on Oklahoma State. So I'm like, all right, who's another team in that top 3? Kansas State. Not a lot of weapons at wide receiver or tight end that really stood out to me. D-line was very bad last year. They got a couple guys in. There's some turnover there, so maybe they'll be a little bit better. I just think young quarterback, there's going to be a couple dud games in there, especially in a conference like this. Weird things happen. Kansas State's my overrated team. I don't love it, but I think they're a little bit too highly rated. Maybe shouldn't be above Oklahoma State.
Okay. All right. Ben, who's your overrated team?
My overrated team is Utah.
Oh.
And the reason I think
man.
the reason I think they're overrated is because I just, based off of like what I have heard, like, I mean, we've talked about it, right? Cam Rising is not 100%. If you're not 100% a year and a half after an ACL tear, like, you just might not ever be 100%.
No, and he won't. Be.
Yeah, and that's a concern, especially with the offensive line question marks. Like, you could easily see a scenario in which week 2 or 3, Cam Rising takes just this like fluky bad hit to the leg, and like that's it. Same with a guy like Brant Keithy, who I think are the two most valuable guys outside of Micah Bernard. They've got some good running backs. Like, I think the floor is just so high for Utah, but I just don't buy that they will hit the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think I think they are an overrated. Like, I think they're overrated, and that means they go 9-3.
Yeah.
With just running the ball and defense. And that's not to say, and again, to be clear, it's hard to find an overrated team in this conference. So like, it's not, I think they stink. It's just, we're putting them in the 10-11 win category, and I think it might end up being 9 because I don't buy the health of 2 of their best 3 players on the offensive side of the ball.
When you started coming on to the Karter cast, Ben, did Karter give you the spark notes on how to piss Dylan off? Because you've done a stellar job these 2 episodes. I just want to congratulate you. I don't think it's a bit, but I feel like Karter was like, all right, you hated Utah. Dylan loves Cam Rising. Talk crap about him. Screw Miami. Screw Cam Ward. Like, you've done a great job.
Hey, no,
so
I'm a believer in Cam Rising.
Kudos to Ben Heyman for his
I just have issues with
inaugural
the
debut on the Karter cast. Love it. Love to see it.
I love talking about Keithy. We interviewed him briefly at Big-12 Media Days. That dude has like crazy football eyes. Like, that dude, the whole time he just kept saying, I love to get hit. I just want to hit people. I want to get hit. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this dude is psycho. I love that out of my tight end. That's what I want to see. So
it's a Kyle Whittingham guy.
Yeah, he is. But my overrated team, I'm going BYU. I'm just kidding. I have BYU at 1-11. I'm just kidding. I don't want to piggyback here, but I will go with the Utah Utes as well.
A likely story.
So I had Arizona and Utah both written down, and the issue I have with Arizona is, are they even rated? Yes, they have Noah Fafita and T-Mac and whatnot, but are they? Everyone's like, yeah, they're probably 7-5, and is 6-6 that different? With the question mark of Cam Rising's health, I think that is the biggest deciding factor for me in saying Utah's slightly overrated, like Ben was saying. I'm completely piggybacking off what he said. 9 wins. Like, they're almost in that Florida State territory for me, where everything around them, great. I get it. Like, right on. The floor is so high. But I think that ceiling's a little low, because when you see these rankings, you're like, Utah, 9th, 8th best team in the country. I was like, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I don't think they're the 8th best team in college football, though. Is that crazy?
No, I think that's right. And I think in order to have an overrated team, they have to be like a top 3 or 4 team projected in the conference. You can't be like, oh man, Houston's overrated and they're going to win 5 games. Like, I think you're right in your answer.
Houston, 5 games. That's a bold prediction. All right, let's do underrated. Dylan, start us off.
Underrated? I went UCF. I think that the KJ Jefferson pickup, substituting Plumlee for KJ Jefferson, is going to do them. It's going to do them a lot of favors. They had a top 10 rush grade, PFF like 92.7, most rush yards per attempt in the Big 12. Leading rusher R.J. Harvey is back. I'm big on UCF.
I don't hate that because also KJ Jefferson is definitely a Gus Malzahn kind of guy. And I don't think Plumlee was that guy last year.
No.
Not that guy, pal. And I think KJ Jefferson fits his system perfectly. I wouldn't be surprised, but I feel like UCF is just a sexy team to pick every single year. You're like, ooh, they got Gabriel, they've got Plumlee, they've got Jefferson, and then the quarterback never fully pans out, but then they win a weird upset game. Like last year, they beat Oklahoma State like 45-3 for no reason. They were dead in the water, and all of a sudden they win by 40 against one of the best teams in the Big 12. It made no sense to me, but I don't hate that pick at all.
Let's not ignore Dylan. Bottom 9 in rush defense nationally last year.
Really
turn around that defense.
You're not going to be able to see it, but I literally have it in my notes. It says in the black bottom line, rush defense. Yikes! That's what I put. That's what I put for the rush defense. But they allowed a Big 12 best 196 passing yards. So I understand. Yeah. So I guess you got a point.
KJ Jefferson is he's a good pickup for them from Arkansas. I think he'll be an upgrade from last year, like y'all said. I think that's a pretty good pick.
Connor, what's yours?
I'm going to go a little different direction here. Underrated team for me, Iowa State Cyclones.
That's who I have.
Great call.
That's who I have too.
Let me give you the spiel. So offense, I think they found their groove last year. Scored 26 or more in 6 of their last 8 games. Quarterback Rocco Beck. Am I saying that right? Beck.
Yep. Yeah.
I believe. Rocco Beck returns this year. 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions last year. 4 O-line starters are back. Run game wasn't great, but they were young, inexperienced, and they were already top 10 in sacks allowed. Only allowed 14 total sacks last year for a young offensive line. Beck had 10 touchdowns and only 1 pick in his last 4 games. I do think they found something at the end of the year, and I don't think this number, win total, projection, whatever, has really adjusted for that. They were also second in Big 12 total defense, only behind Texas, who is now gone, and the D-line has 4 quality guys back from a top 40 run defense. That's my case for Iowa State. I think they're criminally underrated this year in the Big 12. I think they'll be competing for a top 3-4 spot. If that O-line and running backs can improve, this offense will click, and the secondary is, pretty good as well. So I like Iowa State this year. Over 7.5 wins is a great bet from me, and they get to play all 3 new teams from the AAC. So I'm sold.
Yeah, I agree, Connor. That's my pick too. I love Iowa State. And also, you mentioned this too. One, the defense was the best outside of Texas too, but also their key players are all young, and they played pretty well last year. They won 7 games, and they come back. It's not this argument of, they came back, but they're bad players. They came back, and they're good players, and they're going to improve.
Yeah.
And so, and like you mentioned, a little bit easier schedule. I love Iowa State. I think that's a great pick. That's mine as well. Ben, what's yours?
My pick, I'm going with Kansas.
So you're worried about the Cam Rising injuries, but not Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, because Kansas 8.5 wins. That's a lot of wins.
No, it is
a lot of wins,
but I do like obviously that is a concern. It definitely is. But I have been sort of the impression you get with the Cam Rising is that look, he got hurt and he's just not going to really be the same guy. Jalen Daniels keeps getting hurt. He comes back. I feel like he's good. Then he gets hurt again. So that is an issue. But I like the running attack, especially with a guy like, Devin Neal.
Oh, he's so good.
And I also like having Jeff Grimes as a play caller for them. He didn't have a ton of success at Baylor, but I really loved him when he was at BYU. I think he's someone who can kind of maybe get something out of this offense even more so than before. The defense is just meh, just like another Big 12 defense. So I'm not sure how much I love that, but I do think Kansas is a team that can be in the top 5 of this conference.
But is that
also
does that make, because they're projected to be the 4th best team?
Are they?
Well, I just talked about them because they haven't even been mentioned in the conversation.
True.
So because otherwise I was going to go Iowa State.
True. But
Iowa State was really my pick.
And
but Kansas.
Yeah. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
But the problem with Kansas is it's not a concern. It's just the concern with Kansas. That's why I was so big on Kansas last year when it was, I believe I got it at 5, 5.5, 6, whatever you got it at, you hit it no problem last year with the win total. But the reason I loved Kansas last year is I knew Jalen Daniels was not a great health bet, but Jason Bean is a easily good enough starter at any other school in the country. He was a very solid quarterback, especially as a backup. He was a great backup. And so I was comfortable there. But they don't have Jason Bean back this year, and it's Jalen Daniels or nothing. And I just don't think I could ever get into that Jalen Daniels business again. Now, if you told me he stays healthy all year, we were talking about this earlier, Connor and Dylan. I think there's a real shot. You see Kansas, you're like, they're 10-2. They're 10-2 right now. Like, they have a very, very easy schedule, especially their non-conference. But, man, it's just like a little nagging injury and he's done. Yeah. It's not even like these major ones, because remember last year, Dylan, Texas, we had Kansas over Texas was game of the year material for us. And then all of a sudden 3 minutes into the game, they're like, oh, by the way, Jalen Daniels not playing today. And then you find out he's out for the season with some minor back injury. And you're like, what is this?
He's the king of being questionable and not playing.
Yeah.
The king.
Him and Puka Nacua. It's Puka Nacua in college, but that's 2 seasons in a row now where it's just not a great health bet. And unless this Kansas offensive line improved, he's a mobile quarterback, so he's going to be a higher risk to get injured. That scares me for Jalen Daniels in Kansas, but I think them along with Colorado are the biggest boomer bust teams in this conference.
If you're betting Kansas, you are hoping and praying that their red zone defense is better than last year. They were dead last in the country in red zone defense. Teams scored 49 out of 50 times on them in the red zone. So you're praying that's at least serviceable. Then also you're praying for Jalen Daniels' health. And if you're telling me Daniels is going to play 12 games, I'm telling you they're going to go 9-3. But that is the whole holdup with me in this team. Like you guys said, injury history. Mm-hmm. Any value in them, or I guess disvalue, unvalue, I don't know the right term for that. They don't have a home stadium this year. They're playing in Kansas City because their stadium's under construction. Is there anything to say about that? They don't have a home field.
Did they ever?
Okay, fair. You know what? Fair. I set you up for that. I threw you a lob off the backboard.
Yeah, I was about to say. I was like, and I'm a Kansas guy. I love Kansas, but I just don't feel comfortable putting my money on them. But like right before a game, I'm like, ooh, I like Kansas -5 in this game. Then that's different. But as a preseason future bet, I just don't feel comfortable putting my money on Kansas. But like you mentioned, Ben, they're in the Big 12 title game. I'm not sitting here like, how the hell did this happen? So,
yeah.
All right. Let's, speaking of Jalen Daniels and quarterbacks, let's do top 5 quarterbacks. Let's do this. Do you want to do the same thing as last time? We give our 5 and go down. Does that work for y'all?
Yeah.
All right. And all right.
That increases suspense.
All right. Okay. Dylan, give me number 5.
Number 5, guy we haven't talked about yet, DeQuan Finn, transfer from Toledo, coming into Baylor. What are we shaking our heads for?
I'm out.
Keep going. No,
I'm out.
It's your turn to talk, Dylan. Keep going.
DeQuan Finn at Toledo, 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, about 8.5 yards per attempt, 7 rush touchdowns, 563 yards. I think I know why Connor's out now, because we were probably on the same thought process as Thomas Castellanos, because that's what I see with this guy. No?
See, I actually, I didn't have him top 5. I did write down a few notes, him on the ground. It does remind me of Castellanos. Just electric. You don't know what you're going to get. Yeah. 25 rush touchdowns in 3 years. I see the vision. I just don't think he's top 5. I think coming from Toledo, you can't automatically put him in the top 5. But
babe, if you're DeQuan Finn, you're jumping the top 5 for me, baby. If you're coming from the state of Ohio.
DeQuan Finn, with the whole Baylor thing in general, I don't want to get anywhere near the Baylor business almost at any point this season, because Dave Aranda has the hottest seat in college football, and that could just blow up. And so DeQuan Finn, I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's top 5.
You don't want to get in the business. I'm a startup investor. I'm so invested in this Baylor team, and you'll hear it later. But
they're like Blockbuster.
I'm seed funding. I'm a seed funder right now.
There we go. All right, Connor, give me number 5.
Number 5 for me, guy we just talked about, Jalen Daniels.
5?
5th slot. 5. You know what? Health bet. Number 1. If you're saying he's going to play 12 games, then I'll put him at probably 3, but can't do it. Sorry about it. That factors in for me.
Ben, 5.
5, I'm going with KJ Jefferson. I really like the situation that he's in. I think, like Dylan said, he and Gus Malzahn are a good fit. I also think that they have a good ground game that's going to make it easier for him. RJ Harvey, that guy's a dude. So I really like KJ Jefferson to have one nice last year here at UCF.
I had Cam Rising at 5, and I took the I took the health part out of it.
Also, now health matters.
No, but I took the health part out of it. But I agree with you, Connor. Like, it depends how you looked at it. So I think you're fair seeing that, because if you put the health part into it, Cam Rising is not sniffing this top 5. Yeah, it's more
This
of
is a bit.
It's not a bit. It's really not a bit.
This has to be a bit right now.
It's really not a bit. It was between him and KJ Jefferson for me. And KJ Jefferson, I just don't think he can ever get it going in the air. And that's why I couldn't go with it. But yeah, Camp Rising at 5. So all right, that's a fun number 5. Let's go 4, Dylan.
4, I got KJ Jefferson. I think that this, at UCF, this is going to be a great situation for him. We've covered it enough. KJ Jefferson 4.
Ben.
At 4, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders.
Whoa, that's the quote card right there.
Graphic.
That's the graphic
up there. Yeah. No, I'm not really buying. I do think there are upgrades at the offensive line. I do think, though, that you're switching up the offensive play caller again. I think this is a guy that he's going to put up a lot of yards, but like it's just so. I just think there are other guys that are going to be in better positions to perform better than Shedeur Sanders this year.
I also think if you do it as the argument where you put some of these other guys in his shoes, do they perform at his level? And I don't think even close. I think he saved Colorado in so many of those games, especially you watch that first game against TCU. You're like, how is this guy making these throws? These are incredible throws on the run, running for his life. It was like the season before Sam Howell had his big hype show at Carolina. Every play, it's scramble, and then he just tosses it up, and you're like, how did he make that throw? That was phenomenal. I think that's crazy putting Shedeur at 4. But
Ben, you better be careful. You might get charged with a hate crime. That's pretty bad.
Connor.
Yeah, number 4. This is a guy we haven't mentioned yet, and it's a guy that I don't see a lot of people talking about, and that's Garrett Green at West Virginia. That's my number 4 for this conference.
I don't hate that at all.
So number 1 point, great O-line. In 2023, 3rd best in the country, 10 sacks allowed, 3rd best rushing offense, dominated time of possession. They just dominated, that offensive line did. Garrett Green, though, pretty good through the air. Accuracy could improve, 54% completion percentage, but on the ground, almost 800 rushing yards, 13 scores last year. I think he's one of the most criminally underrated, not talked about enough guys coming into the Big 12 this year. And West Virginia's schedule is a gauntlet. But I think overall, Garrett Green's going to perform pretty well and probably increase maybe some draft stock, at least get people talking about him, I think.
So, question real quick, Connor. 6 receivers from West Virginia transferred out this year. I don't think people leave a quarterback situation that they like.
I think that's not true. If people are dishing out the NIL money, I think that's the number 1 primary motivating factor.
All right.
But fair. That is fair. The weapons aren't awesome, but 800 yards on the ground, we're just going to run the read option all day, Dylan. That's all we need to do.
Okay, fair enough.
I put Avery Johnson at 4.
Oh.
Yeah, I put Avery Johnson at 4. I'm a big fan of the Avery Johnson game. I mean, we've gotten a small sample size, but I believe in it, and I think that seam around Kansas State's going to make him a lot better. Number 3, Dylan.
Number 3, I went Jalen Daniels when healthy. If you can stay healthy for a whole year, Daniels at number 3 for me.
Ben.
Same. Jalen Daniels, same reasons.
There we go. Connor.
Dylan will like this. I went Cam Rising 3 just because I do think he bounces back this year. He might not be 100%, but the talent is there. We've seen it at least. So I've got him 3.
I've also got Jalen Daniels at 3. When healthy, I think he's clearly the 3rd best quarterback in this conference. Nothing more to add. Dylan, 2.
Number 2 for me, Shedeur Sanders. Again, we've talked about him. One of the most electric quarterbacks, in this conference, college football, whatever you want to say. He makes do with very little, and we've talked about that last year. Shedeur number 2 for me.
Ben.
At number 2, I'm going with Avery Johnson. I like you, Karter. I'm really buying into the hype. I just like what I see from him. I think he's in a good situation. I think a lot of it's going to come in the latter half of the season. I think he's going to be one of these guys, kind of like some of these teams like Iowa State, Oklahoma State, where things click in the second half of the year. But I think when it clicks, he's as good as almost everybody in the conference.
Connor.
Real quick on that, Ben, I think Avery Johnson's ceiling is one of the highest in the Big 12. So I don't hate that at all. I think there is a world where he's a top 5
I agree.
quarterback. My number 2, I'm with Dylan here at Shedeur Sanders. For all the reasons we've already mentioned, did a lot with nothing, and I think he'll be pretty good this year.
Number 2, I have Noah Fafita. I have Fafita at 2.
Really?
Yep. So that means
Love
I
it.
got
love it.
I got him. I got Sanders at 1, but I've got Fafita at 2. He's phenomenal. I think it's a 2-horse race between Fafita and Sanders in my eyes. But Dylan, go number 1.
Number 1, Cam Rising. What else do you expect? The guy made me rich. I got to put him at number 1. The guy made me rich. I was famous on
Noah
Pac-12
Fafita's
Reddit
not
boards.
in your top 5.
That's brutal.
No, I had him at 6, and I was kind of wondering if I wanted to keep Jalen Daniels even in there or not because of injury stuff. So Fafita was on the cusp. Yes, I told you. You can laugh at me now, but he is going to be a star at Baylor.
Ben.
Number 1, Noah Fafita.
Yeah, I don't.
Wow.
I don't argue.
What's crazier, Noah Fafita at not in Dylan's top 5 or Shedeur Sanders at 4 for me? Which is crazier?
Noah Fafita not
Ooh.
top 5. Not even a question.
That's wild.
I agree with that.
Connor,
And
who do you have?
spoiler, Noah Fafita's number 1 for me. You look at some of the numbers,
Holy
73% completion percentage. He doesn't make mistakes. Wide receiver 1, I cannot pronounce his first name.
T-Mac,
McMillan.
baby.
T-Mac. Wide receiver 1, amazing dude. Noah Fafita, though, one thing about him, 26 sacks led up by that O-line last year. He's only 5'10", under 200 pounds. They have got to protect him.
Young.
They have got to protect him this year. A guy that size taking that many hits, as Panthers fans, we see that all the time with Bryce Young as Panthers fans. But a guy that size, you got to protect him. I think Fafita is a clear number 1 here, and I can't believe Dylan doesn't have him top 5.
Yeah, that's insane. That's genuinely insane. I've got Shedeur at 1, man. If you put Shedeur in a good system with good offensive line, this dude is bona fide, without question, the number 1 pick in the draft. It's not even a debate. If you put him in at Utah, or if you put Fafita in at Utah, these guys, they're number 1 overall picks without question. Just the offensive line is so bad, and he's doing
I don't know
well.
if the fan base would embrace him.
Yeah. That might be a problem. Go a little further south than Salt Lake, but anyhow. Yeah, I look, Sanders is the best quarterback in the conference for me. I mean, you can make an argument he's the best quarterback in college football. I probably wouldn't go that far, maybe, but he's in that conversation. So I got Shedeur Sanders at 1. Real quick, favorite bets, quick fire, Dylan.
Favorite bets, Baylor over 5.5 wins. I also have Iowa State over 7.5 wins. I think Iowa State has the best defense in the Big 12.
There we go, Ben.
BYU under 4.5. They just don't do. A lot of people have them at 6 wins. They don't do anything well. Bad offensive line should maybe be a little better. Debatably worse quarterback situation in the conference. Some good wide receivers, a good defensive coordinator, but I don't like the talent, especially in the trenches on the inside of the defensive line. And linebackers young. They just don't have enough Power 5 level guys across the board. They're like a 4-8 team in my mind. So I got under
4-8, 5-7 for me for sure. I mean, I think their total is right there. I think right at the perfect
I think
spot.
it's right too.
Yeah. A team is going to struggle going into a college football season if they're running all 4 quarterbacks in fall camp. That is a disaster situation when all 4 quarterbacks have a real shot at the starting job for week 1. That is not a good sign at all going into the college football season. I don't care who you are. The other thing is, if you're a team that doesn't bring your quarterback to media days, that's another very bad sign. And BYU was not even thinking about bringing a quarterback to media days this year. So, Ben, I don't hate it. I do think the one thing I will say for BYU, it gets overstated a lot, but I still think it's true. playing in Provo, Utah is a huge advantage. That's why Utah has a big advantage. That's why BYU has a big advantage. The altitude matters. The home crowd matters. Do we see that home crowd die down as the season goes on? Probably, but they have some decent games at home. But 5 wins feels right, and they miss another bowl game. Connor, favorite bet?
I've got a couple favorites here. Arizona over 7.5 wins. My one concern, Dino Babers is in an offensive coordinator from Syracuse. That O-line at Syracuse was never great. And like I mentioned earlier, they have to protect Fafita. But I still like them over 7.5. Oklahoma State over 8.5. I think it's a great bet. Utah over 9.5, a little juiced. I would lean that way. And then Iowa State over 7.5. Do like that. And I don't hate Colorado under 5.5 just because the schedule. Honest to God, just because of the schedule.
Yeah, I don't hate it either. I just don't want to get into the Colorado betting business at all because
I'll probably stay away.
I feel like every other day you see a graphic being like Colorado has more bets on than any other NFL team by 500 or something. You're like, okay, whatever. Like,
and Cincinnati under 5.5. Not a believer in Cincinnati. Haven't mentioned them yet. Don't see a lot I like there.
Can I spin zone Cincinnati real quick? I think I agree with you. 5 wins is on the money for them. They're going to have the exact same season BYU did last year. They're going to start off 4-0. Have you seen their non-conference schedule?
I have.
It's bad. Indeed. It's really bad. And then they play Houston week 4, worst team in the conference. Probably start 4-0, and I think they finish 5-7. But that's
I thought the same thing. I couldn't find like a couple Big 12 wins later in the year. I couldn't find
them. No. And so I think the move with Cincinnati is wait till they're 4-0 and then live bet their season total under, because I think by that point they might be favored in a few more games. And then you're like, ooh, 6.5 wins for Cincinnati feels like quite a bit. Are they going to get 3 more in the Big 12? I don't think so. I could see them finishing with 1 win in the Big 12, max 2, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And it's also they're All-American defensive tackle is going through blood clots right now. It's really sad. Actually. So, But anyhow, I have Oklahoma State over wins and Iowa State over wins. Those are my only 2, and then obviously Oklahoma State, I sprinkled them to win the conference as well. Those are my only 2 bets, and then conference winner, conference title game, and give me the conference winner, Dylan.
Give me Utah, Iowa State. I'm gonna go Iowa State. I think Iowa State does. I like the defense. I'm a big defense guy.
Ben.
I'm going Oklahoma State over Kansas.
That's a fun game. I like that game.
That's a fun game.
Connor.
I'm going to go Utah over Oklahoma State. I think Utah's just got the talent, and I think if Cam Rising's even 85% of what he was, I think they are just a step above, especially on defense in this conference. So give me Utah over Oklahoma State.
I got Oklahoma State over Utah. I think
fair.
Wow.
I think it's going to be – I think Utah is the best season overall, and I think Oklahoma State gets revenge in the Big 12 title game and wins it this year. All right, the rest of the conference. Is there anybody else we didn't talk about that we should talk about?
That we should talk about?
Arizona State. We got a lot to talk about Arizona State if you want.
I don't know if we can do that. Under 4.5 blind? No.
Under 4.5 blind. Houston at 3.
I will say
these 3.5 lines in these power conferences always entice me. I'm like, that's kind of a fun bet. Yeah, Vanderbilt every year. You're like, Vanderbilt 2.5. Virginia last year, like, ooh, Virginia 2.5 wins. That's kind of fun. And then they had to win as a 24-point underdog to cash that bet.
Who'd they play, Karter? Who'd they play?
I think they played Mac Brown and the Carolina Tar Heels.
Yeah,
I don't remember that. Amnesia.
I really think
easy to miss.
I guess the other teams we didn't really touch on. TCU, they scream like Syracuse in the ACC 6-6, best 7-5 ish. Like
they don't do anything for me. They've got like 4 or 5 offensive line transfers. Too many question marks on defense. Defense was horrible last year. I don't see it. I will say this about TCU. Has there ever been a faster fall from like national relevance than TCU in college football? Because in 2022, people were freaking out. They got steamrolled by Michigan, and now they're back to just being relatively, not known on a national scale, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy because they're just another team now. Like, because even Boise State, you're like, oh, I feel a little nostalgic about Boise State, but then like TCU, it's just nothing. You're just like, yeah.
I don't think history's going to look kindly on TCU like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because they got just destroyed in that national title game. Texas Tech, we didn't talk much about. Taj Brooks, great running back, probably the second best running back in the conference. They're a team that, like, you're pissed off if you, like, say you have like Iowa State win total over and they got to go to Lubbock. You're like, oh crap, they got to play at Lubbock. That's a tough game. I don't know. What more do you have?
They have a brutal Big 12 road schedule.
Tell me.
Arizona, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, all on the road. That's pretty tough.
That is pretty tough. All right, real quickly, I'm going to give my record for each of these teams super fast. I got Arizona going 7-5. I think they're barely going to miss their win total over. Arizona State, I have them going 3-9. I think they're going to be really bad. Sam Leavitt is not a great quarterback in my eyes. Baylor 5-7, but I think Aranda loses his job at the end of the season. Very, very hot seat in Baylor for him at Waco. BYU 4-8. Let's be honest, the Sataki era is not going well in the Big 12. A lot of things are going to change in the offseason, I think, especially the offensive coordinator position. Cincinnati, 5.5 wins. I'm going under. I think they finish 5-7. I think they don't win. I think they finish off the season losing 6 straight, to be honest. Colorado, I have them going 6-6. I know that's crazy. I have them going 6-6 just barely because I believe in Shedeur Sanders so much. Houston, 3-9. It's going to be a tough year for Willie Fritz. He turned around that Tulane program, but it took him like 3 years to do so. Same thing's going to happen in Houston. They're going to need some time and patience to get that program off the ground. Iowa State, 9-3. I think 9-3 is a fair one for Iowa State. I love them. Best defense in the conference, like Dylan mentioned. Kansas, this is impossible to guess. 8-4. 8-4. I don't think they actually finished 8-4. I feel like they finished 7-5 or 10-2. But I think I'm going to go with 8-4 just to be safe. Jalen Daniels' health bet is just the worst thing in sports right now. Kansas State, I'm going 9-3. I think they finished a hair under. And then Oklahoma State, I got them going 10-2. I think they're going to have a fantastic year behind Ollie Gordon, Mike Gundy. TCU 6-6. Not huge on TCU this season. Texas Tech 7-5. 7-5 feels right. UCF, I got 7-5 as well. I think they barely make a bowl game, but their run game is going to be unbelievable. Utah 10-2 at least. I could see 11-1 to be honest. Even though I did say they were slightly overrated, but if Cam Rising's healthy, they're winning at least 10 games. And then West Virginia 6-6, but that schedule's tough for the Mountaineers. Any issues with those? Any ones you change?
I'm not on the Colorado 6-6 train, but
fair.
I wouldn't be like over the moon shocked. I think that's pretty good. I like these little 90-second run-throughs, Karter. This is good. I like this.
I just want one fan base to be like, you think West Virginia's going 6-6? I'm like, yeah, your schedule's hard. Schedule's brutal. Also, I will say this.
I love West Virginia this year. Garrett Green's great. Their schedule is a gauntlet.
And Neil Brown saved his job like I've never seen. I have never seen a hotter seat in college football, and somehow this dude kept his job last year. Unbelievable job by him. They're projected to finish dead last year, and they had a great season. So before we hop off, I did want to say this, though. I'm so glad football's back because I cannot stand NBA Twitter and NBA social media. Oh my gosh. And then when you go into football, like football social media is rough and you get stupid comments. That's anything. But football fans are so much more intelligent than basketball fans. Like, they just know the game better. Except Eagles fans, maybe, Dylan.
Yeah.
I know you're thinking that's a hate crime or something like that. No. Just football fans. And I think football's a little easier to grasp than basketball. I think there's so much that's not just stats based in basketball, but
and then there's baseball fans at the very top.
Baseball and golf and cricket are cream of the crop, right?
Cricket.
Soccer? You guys aren't on soccer Twitter though.
I'm not. NBA Twitter is a bunch of brain dead people, though. I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh, doing
engagement farming,
just seeing comments,
the same reply.
Brandon Ingram's this great guy. You better not say anything wrong about Brandon. Oh my gosh. Okay, like I understand there's college football teams I can't, like Alabama fans. Like I hate you, but
no. What about that girl Brooke, Roll Tide Brooke that was commenting on our stuff?
Yeah,
no comment, man. No comment. No comment.
Shut up.
If she's alive, What's up? How's it going? Yes.
She's
Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well, Roll Tide Brooke. Anyhow, that's it from us. We'll be back with Big Ten and SEC previews next week. Make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at CarterCast on everything. Subscribe, rate, review, download SeatGeek, use code CarterCast, $20 off. We'll be back next week. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.